As for the template for a resume, the first thing that you should have is your name on the top of everything. So your name is the first thing that you write, and then it is followed by your address, home address, obviously the present address that you are living at, then city or zip code in case the company wants to communicate with you through your postal address. And then the next thing you include is your official email address. So that's the most important thing to include in today's world, because most of the companies are moving online, so they may communicate with you through your emails, but official email is the best one to use rather than your personal email address. Phone number, obviously in this case you might include your cell number. Education, so we give this heading in the center, and then we mention the university like this. Okay, so for example, we talk about, okay, I did this degree from this university, and we mention any relevant coursework, right? And then degree, as you can see, the hints are given here. And then if you have studied abroad, if applicable, otherwise we may omit this. Then we come to your prior education setting. So your intermediate or your graduation, or maybe your matriculation. So we include these 3-4 things over here. And again, you mention on your right the city from where you did this, and if date is mentioned, because in few of the boards you are given date of announcement certificate, result date of announcement certificate, so you may include that. And then the next thing is experience. So you may mention the organization name and the position title, the position you worked on, and then again, where, in which city you work. You mention on the right side month, year, which means that from which date and year you worked, you started working for the organization, and to what date you performed the activities over there, you served there. So beginning with your most recent position, that's the key. Describe your experience, skills, and resulting outcomes in bullet or paragraph form. So both ideas are valid. However, most of the times we see bullets being used for experience, education, or every other thing that we write in a resume. So begin each line with an action verb. Now, what's an action verb? We are going to talk about action verbs in the later part of this video as well, and include details that will help the reader understand your accomplishments, skills, knowledge, abilities, and achievements. Now, if you see this particular line, you have to use 7 C's, because you have to portray your skills rather clearly and concretely, so that the person can understand what experience, what have you got over the over the years of experience. So next thing is quantify where possible. Sometimes you need to use those digits, those figures, such as GPA or any percentage or any kind of a reward that could be quantified. For example, a position or something like that. Do not use personal pronouns. Each line should be a phrase rather than a full sentence. So this is also important, because sometimes we start writing sentences and the whole space gets occupied. So we need to be careful. We need to be brief as well as to the point. So in the same way, we are going to mention any 1, 2, or 3 organizations you have worked for, and what experience you have, abilities and knowledge you have got from working for the organization. And then leadership and activities. So any leadership skills that you got, or any other activities that you perform. Now, this section can be formatted similarly to the experience section, or you can omit descriptions for activities. If this section is more relevant to the opportunity you are applying for, consider moving this above your experience section. Now, this is important, that sometimes what happens, organizations are more concerned with your education. So you put the education section first. However, in other some other organizations may not be interested in what you have done academically. Rather, they are more interested in what you have, what experience you have and what skills you have. So if this is the case, you should mention the things, the experience section and this sort of activities and leadership skill section before mentioning your education. So you can switch places of these sections also, right? Now, next thing, skills and interests. So however, these things are optional, but it is important to include these sections, being a recent graduate, because they are important to portray a positive image of your professional personality. So, for example, you may mention the technical skills you have. For example, you have mastery over some computer software or programming sort of thing in business arena, or language you can speak. In our context, since it is a multilingual context, we can speak 3 to 4 languages very easily, if not at least 3 languages: your own mother tongue, the national language, and the official language. So you should mention the languages you can speak. Why? Because this shows that you are able to communicate with a variety of people. Thus, you are able enough to expand the horizon of your company to a wider audience, to the wider recipients of the product or services. Next thing is any scientific techniques or laboratory, or for example, other sort of scientific skills if you have, again, if applicable. Interest, this is important. You very well know that companies deduce your personality based on your interest also. So you should list activities you enjoy that may spark interview conversation. And again, mention those interests which you are really interested in and which you are able to justify, rather than just portraying a very positive image of you on your CV or your resume, but in real you are unable to talk about them. You are unable to do anything, any such thing. So let's talk about one of the samples of a resume. Remember, we do not give this heading resume or anything. The first thing to be on the top of the page is your own name. So for example, this is a name of a of the person who is writing or who is making the CV, Roberta Josephina Maddox. So your name and then address, postal address, for example, particularly the postal code or city code, and then your official address. Always use your college or university email account and check it frequently, even if you have enabled forwarding. So personal contact number, very important. If you see education, so name of the university, and okay, and for example, where is this and what degree did you did, so any specialization if you have done, and any GPA. So this is where, if you see, the point of quantifying comes. Quantify your resume, which means you can give quantity, give numbers. Okay, specialization, anything relevant coursework with the that is relevant with the position that you are applying for. And when did you complete this degree? For example, May 2018. And another degree, if you have done any third degree that you have done. Yes, if you are including, if you are talking about any coursework, be sure it's relevant to the position to which you are applying for. So for example, you did some research in your undergraduate course, for example, on supply chain management and something like that. So, and you are applying for a job for which this research is relevant. So you can mention this, and but again, you need to see the relation, the relevance. And experience, use different verbs, right? Examine, so these are action verbs. Examine, and then researched. So use action verbs. If you can remember, related to 7 C's of communication, this was like putting action into verbs rather than nouns. You should not write did examination. No, rather put action into verbs. Examine the profitability of foreign market. So the name of the company you work for, where is this company located, and the duration of your job over there, and what was your designation. And then you can write a paragraph, or you can write this sort of information in bullet form also. This examined profitability of foreign market for new fruit drink using analysis of comparable brands. Okay, once again, if you see managed focus groups, and then created ideas, presented findings. So these are the action verbs that the developer of the CV is using, and make sure that you use them very, very carefully. I'm going to show you a list in which you can see what sort of verbs you can use for variety of actions. One thing. Secondly, you can use this part in write this into two ways. First is bullet form. That's also okay. So for example, examined profitability on one line, and then managed focus groups on the next line, and then created ideas on the third line. So go on. And the other way is this. You can write in a paragraph form, short paragraph form. But again, you see, once again, we are not using personal pronoun. For example, I. No, you are using action verbs. You are using different action verbs for different things. So any experience that you have are going to mention in this format, using this format. Okay. And then leadership. Note that relevant interest and skills can be demonstrated through campus and volunteer activities, as well as through previous employment. Now, any sort of interest or skills you have got through volunteer work. Now, most of the students ask that we are fresh graduates, undergraduates, we are fresh graduates, we do not have any experience. So what can we write in the experience section? What can we write in skills section? So the best thing is to use your experience of academia. You volunteer for so many activities, and you can use all of those skills, all of those interests in order to develop an interesting and eye-catching CV. Okay, so any sort of skills, it's not necessary that you use the word leadership. You can use the word skills also here in order to, convince the employer that what particular skills you have used, or you can just omit it and merge this with this form, skills and interests. So again, up to you. So technical skills, language skills, and interests. So if you see in the previous format in the template that I showed you, laboratory skills, for example, but the writer, the developer of this resume is not including any of them. So you can include anything that is relevant in your experience, and you can portray the skills for your selection in your resume. Make sure that you be consistent with presenting data. Use either numerals or words, but not both. So if you are using 500 students, you are using 500 numbers, numerals. So use numerals throughout the CV. If you are using words, so 500, in word form. So use word form. So this is the key, that you have to be consistent with many of the things. So if you are using bullet forms, for example, in experience section, use bullets for all the experience section and for all this as well, right? With leadership and all of this. But if you are using paragraph form, you can use paragraph form also. So this is one of the many ways to create a resume, and this particular resume that you see on your screen is a sample shared by Harvard Business School. So it's very authentic and very relevant to your course. I hope you are going to use it and you are going to learn a lot from this.